Okay, Charlie, we're almost to the hospital, okay?
Hereditary. Annie Graham lives with her husband Steve, teenage son Peter, and 13-year-old daughter Charlie in a quiet Utah home that looks just normal enough. When Annie's secretive mother, Ellen, dies, the family calls it closure, but it's actually preparation. Ellen belonged to a cult devoted to King Paimon, and her funeral quietly transfers that devotion to Annie's bloodline. Life continues in fragments. Annie buries herself in miniature dioramas. Steve medicates the tension. Peter hides behind weed and headphones. Charlie sketches dead birds and keeps that same odd clicking sound in her throat. When Peter takes her to a party, peanuts trigger an allergic reaction. The drive to the hospital ends with her decapitation on a telephone pole. The silence after that scene kind of stays with you throughout the rest of the movie. Grief breaks what little order remains. Annie meets Joan, a friendly stranger who introduces her to seances. Annie thinks she's talking to Charlie, but instead opens the final gate. And then Steve burns alive because he realized it was not Charlie that Annie was talking to. Annie's body becomes a puppet and starts haunting Peter until he decides to jump out of a window. Peter is not Peter anymore and awakens as Paimon in the attic to a group of naked worshippers kneeling around him. A great ending to a good horror movie, right? Sinister.
That's the family who lived here.
Ellison Oswalt used to be famous. One hit book years ago about a real murder case. Now he's desperate for relevance, so he drags his wife Tracy and their two kids, Trevor and Ashley, into a quiet Pennsylvania suburb. What he doesn't tell them is that the previous family who lived there was hanged from the tree in the backyard, and their youngest child vanished without a trace. Perfect material for a comeback, so he thinks. In the attic, Ellison finds an old projector and a box of Super 8 reels with handwritten labels: Sleepy Time, Barbecue, Pool Party. He sets up the projector late at night, curiosity over sense. The footage starts warm. Families laughing, kids running, sprinklers. Then each film turns. The families are killed in carefully staged rituals. A figure appears in the corner of every frame. Pale face, hollow eyes. His name is Bughul, or Mr. Boogie. As Ellison watches more, the house starts to creak at night. Footsteps in the attic. His son's night terrors return. His daughter paints the murders on her wall in exact detail. He realizes something is wrong and tries to burn the reels, but they reappear in perfect condition. When he moves the family out, thinking he's escaped, he's already stepped into the last act. The missing children from each film were possessed by Bughul, and now it's Ashley's turn. The final reel is called House Painting. Ashley slashes her family's throats, drags them through their own blood, and films it with eerie calm. Bughul lifts her into the frame and disappears. The projector stops. The room stays silent. Instead of writing the story, he and his family became part of the story.
No matter how busy you ever got, you always found time for me. I can't believe I'm never gonna speak to you again.
Evil Dead Rise. Beth comes to Los Angeles to visit her sister Ellie, hoping for a normal reunion. Instead, she finds Ellie raising 3 kids alone in a crumbling apartment building about to be demolished. The night she arrives, an earthquake cracks open the garage floor, revealing an old bank vault that was sealed decades earlier. Inside, a torn copy of the Naturom de Monto and a set of vinyl records from a long-dead priest who couldn't keep his mouth shut. Ellie's son, Danny, thinking it's just weird vintage stuff, takes it upstairs and plays the record. The Latin incantations echo through the walls, and something starts moving behind them. It all starts after Ellie gets possessed inside of the elevator. After that, she collapses on the kitchen floor. Her family is unaware she actually died in the elevator. Her voice returns, but it's not her. The Deadites are awake again, using her face and her body like a weapon. The apartment becomes a maze of screams, blood, and locked doors. Beth tries to protect the kids, but there's only one left to save as Danny and Bridget melted together with what used to be their mother. This scene was necessary because we needed some extra trauma in this already traumatizing movie. So, as all of that trauma continues, we end up in the garage where Beth manages to slaughter her sister/cousin/niece. It all seems to end happily. But this video is about horror movies with unhappy endings. The next morning, Jessica, who we saw in the beginning of the movie, walks to her car. She sees the blood everywhere and gets attacked by the demonic force. It found its next host.
Howdy. You ever heard of exorcism?
How do you go about getting an exorcism?
I beg your pardon?
The Exorcist. This movie absolutely terrified me when I was a child. Now that I'm old, I think no child should watch this movie to begin with. Reagan McNeil is 12, polite, curious, and bored in her Georgetown home while her mother, actress Chris McNeil, juggles work and a failing relationship. It starts small. Strange noises in the attic, a shaking bed, a voice that doesn't sound like a child's. Doctors blame stress. Psychiatrists call it repression. Chris listens to the experts because denial is easier than believing her daughter is speaking in dead languages. When Reagan's behavior turns violent, the doctors run every test possible, wires and needles covering her body. Nothing explains it. Her face changes, her voice deepens, and words no human should know pour out of her mouth. Desperate, Chris turns to Father Damien Karras, a priest losing his faith after his mother's death. He calls for help from Father Marin, an older exorcist who's seen this before. The demon inside Regan calls itself Pazuzu, and it knows all their fears. The ritual drains them both. Marin dies during the exorcism, his heart giving out mid-prayer. Karras, broken and desperate to end this whole thing, invites the demon into himself and throws his body out the window to stop it. I don't think something like this has ever worked in horror movies. The street below is silent. Reagan survives, cleaned up, smiling, a cross around her neck. But the evil isn't gone, and Pazuzu simply moved on.
Eyes gray.
What happened to you? What we have seen.
The autopsy of Jane Doe Tommy and Austin Tilden run a small-town morgue in Grantham, Virginia. It's quiet until Sheriff Burke brings in an unidentified woman found half buried at a bloody crime scene. No struggle, no wounds. She looks in perfect state. Tommy names her Jane Doe. The house she came from looks like a massacre, but her body could be straight out of a beauty ad, so that's kind of weird. They start the autopsy expecting routine answers. They get none. Her wrists and ankles are shattered without bruising. Her lungs are full of ash. Her tongue is gone. There's peat under her nails from a place she's never been. Tommy calls her the cleanest murder he's ever seen, which is impressive for a man surrounded by corpses. The deeper they cut, the colder the room gets. The radio starts playing old music on its own. Bells tied to the other corpses begin to ring, like they're trying to warn them. Tommy insists it's just science, but even science starts sweating. When they try to burn her, the flames avoid her body and eat everything else. That's when Tommy realizes she's not a victim, but something unnatural. A witch, preserved and cursed to keep feeling her pain forever. By morning, Tommy is dead because the witch transferred her injuries to him. Austin has fallen to his death, and Jane still lies flawless on the table. Sheriff Burke loads her into a van for another morgue. The radio hums, her toe twitches, and you know, someone's night shift just got a lot worse.
What's going on?
It's death.
The mist after a violent storm hits Bridgeton, Maine. Artist David Drayton takes his son Billy to the grocery store for supplies. The fog rolls in minutes later, dense, white, and quiet. Then a man runs inside, screaming that something in the mist took his friend. The store locks down. Nobody wants to believe it until they see the tentacle tear a kid apart in the loading dock. Outside, unseen creatures move through the mist, dragging anyone who steps beyond the glass doors. Inside, a different horror forms. Mrs. Carmody, a local zealot, turns fear into religion, preaching that the mist is God's punishment, which I think is even scarier than the mist itself. The longer the group is trapped, the more they listen. When she calls for human sacrifice, half the store cheers. Nothing like the apocalypse to bring out everyone's true colors. David leads a small group to escape, driving blindly into the fog. Hours later, the car runs out of gas. The screams in the distance grow closer. David shoots his son and the others to spare them a worse death. Then he steps out, ready for the end, only for the mist to clear. Army tanks roll past. Rescue had arrived minutes too late. He doesn't scream, doesn't move. The silence says enough. The monsters weren't in the mist. They were already in aisle 3, arguing about divine punishment.
Car back. Car keys, phone, wallet. You've had your fun.
Eden Lake. Jenny and Steve drive to an abandoned quarry for a weekend escape. He plans to propose and make a romantic trip out of it. Instead, they find broken bottles, graffiti, and a group of teenagers blasting very loud music. When Steve confronts them over a stolen bag, they laugh. It should end there, but it doesn't. When their car's tires are slashed, the trip turns from romantic getaway to survival training. The kids, led by Brett, hunt them through the forest. Jenny and Steve run, plead, and try to hide. But there's no hope for them as there's no way to call for help. And it doesn't take long before Steve is caught. Steve is beaten to death while Brett films it, because why not add murder to your camera roll? Jenny fights back, kills one of them, and crawls through the mud toward the lights of a nearby house. The door opens. Inside are Brett's parents and their friends. The scene looks safe, and for a moment, it feels like rescue. Then, Brett walks in. Her relief dies instantly. They find the dead boy's phone in Jenny's bag. On the phone are the videos of Steve being beaten to death. They assume Jenny is responsible. The adults glance at each other. No questions, no hesitation. The father drags her into the bathroom while someone turns the music up. Her screams are swallowed by the sound of laughter and clinking glasses. Morning comes. The same people sit at the table, sipping coffee, talking about discipline and respect. Brett stares down at his cereal, silent. The ending exposes the real horror. Not random violence, but learned cruelty and social hypocrisy. If you're still watching, congratulations! You've just seen 7 different ways the universe reminds us we don't matter. Hit subscribe before something in your house does it for you, and tell me in the comments which ending ruined your mood the fastest.